Use life as a bargaining chip, win to live, lose to die. Are you ready? Mr. Qi Shan, the daughter of Shen Wenjun, entered a game called Big Player when the Shen family was brutally destroyed. The reward of the game is a chance for resurrection. Shen Yin, who was on the brink of death, chose to participate in the game. Strange amusement park, see Monster Hotel. A series of bizarre worlds unfolded before us. She needs to be as meticulous as a hare, to be alone and brave, and to constantly become stronger. As she climbed up step by step, she also learned the true reason for the closure of the Shen family. The enemy is too powerful, it's okay. She has amazing abilities obtained from countless game worlds. The enemy is too wealthy, it's okay. She has rare treasures brought out from countless game worlds. Let's see how she stirs up the wind and clouds, seeking revenge for injustice, revitalizing the family ties, and paving the way for prosperity. Keywords of the novel. Infinite game. I became God through Krypton with no pop-ups, infinite game. I became God through Krypton with complete TXT download, infinite game. I became God through Krypton with latest chapters reading. Chapter 1. Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 2. Exorcism. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Exorcism. I know now. You can rest assured to go home, meet a beautiful girl, have 2 glasses of wine, and tomorrow we will definitely give you a restored amusement park. Andrew took a sip of black tea and confidently said to Hans. He is a first-class mage, and he doesn't even take this idea seriously in the amusement park. Shen Yin finally found out the identity of the middle-aged fat man. His name is Hans and he is the manager of the amusement park. Hans treated Andrew as if he were his own father, with a typical evening girl face towards her, not even giving her a glass of white water. Lowering her eyes and suppressing the unease in her heart, Shen Yin looked at the 2 of them who were chatting happily. After a brief conversation, Hans was very satisfied with Andrew and took out a check from his sheepskin wallet and placed it on the table. This is the deposit, I'll pay the remaining money tomorrow, he said. Seeing Andrew's faint smile at the corner of his mouth, Shen Yin knew he must be very satisfied with the amount of the check. But she doesn't have time to guess the amount of the check now. She's worried about the 328th player. There's no hint in the plot, she doesn't have any clues, but it also means that anyone could be 328th and anyone could kill her. It seems that we can only remain vigilant and observe the changes. She gently moved her neck and felt the dagger hidden in her spine. When the black-clothed man wiped her neck, her mother inserted a dagger into her sleeve, absorbed her blood, recognized her as the master, and crawled into her arm, swimming until her spine stopped moving, staying still. She entered the game and even followed with a dagger. Hey! What's going on? Hurry up and get ready. Andrew's dissatisfied voice rang out, and Shen Yin realized that she had been too engrossed in her thinking just now, not even knowing when Hans would leave. She lowered her head, responded softly, gritted her teeth, and stumbled out of the office holding the box. Andrew cursed softly, unable to figure out how he would be assigned such an assistant by his superiors. He was young, still a woman, unable to withstand his shoulders or lift his hands, and had a beautiful face, just a fancy vase. He didn't actually like to be like other mages, carrying a vase around to decorate himself. Shen Yin dragged the box to Andrew's designated location, right next to the small cheese hot dog stall at the amusement park. Open the box and place the contents one by one in the corresponding positions. First, a black carpet with holy water mixed with silver paint was used to paint the exorcism formation. Then, a conch larger than the palm of the hand, a crystal ball as big as a football, black feathers from an unknown bird-like basin, and arm-thick candles made of rosemary and magic potion. Shen Yin. No wonder it's so heavy. She let out her breath, half lowered her eyes, and pulled out the last thing. A super large bottle of holy water, at least 2 or 3 liters. Hey. Beautiful girl, may I ask if you need any help? A young voice came from a nearby hot dog stall. Shen Yin suddenly turned around and saw a boy aged 18 or 19. The boy is very tall, with brown curly hair and a pair of green eyes. He is wearing the red and white work clothes of the amusement park staff. Noticing the vigilance in Shen Yin's eyes, he smiled and raised his hands. I didn't mean anything, I just saw that these things are quite heavy. Shen Yin tugged at the corner of her lips, showing an extremely bad expression. So why didn't you come to help just now? You had to wait until I finished before speaking out. You were clearly here a long time ago. The boy was silenced by her rude words, wanting to say something. He opened his mouth and then closed it again. Okay, he's not sincere in helping, he's just looking at this beautiful girl and coming to chat up. Shen Yin pretended to accidentally touch the huge crystal ball. Amidst the stalemate in the atmosphere, the sparkling robe in the sunset rushed over and slapped her hand. Let go. What if we destroy its magnetic field? Andrew was furious. He did not guess wrong. This woman is a complete idiot, and she doesn't know how she passed the assistant assessment. She doesn't even understand the most basic things. Is it possible that she has connections at home? I looked at the girl in confusion, but only saw her thick black hair. Looking down, I saw her pure white hands tightly clasped together. Shen Yin dared not say anything even after being slapped by Andrew, and her apology voice was as low as a mosquito. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. She was naturally fair-skinned, and Andrew's slap was unrestrained, causing the back of her hand to turn red. Looking at her pitiful appearance, like a little dog afraid of being abandoned by its owner, wearing a spacious jujube red wizard assistant uniform further accentuates her petite figure, which I still pity upon seeing. Andrew cleared his throat unnaturally and said, that. As long as you know you're wrong, don't do it again next time. There is no wizard who treats people more leniently than him, Andrew thought to himself. Turning to look at the young man, Andrew raised his eyebrows and spoke sternly, what are you still doing here? Why haven't you left yet? Have you not received the notice? He understands that these impulsive young people have a skeptical attitude towards everything, but he cannot tolerate it, especially at such times. Exorcism is not something that can be used as a joke. The young man smiled bitterly at Andrew and bowed, I'm sorry, I'll leave right away. After speaking, he quickly turned around and ran towards the direction of the gate. All right, it's almost time. We're ready to start the exorcism ceremony. Andrew turned around and faced the magic circle set up by Shen Yin, never looking in the direction where the boy was running away again. Andrew didn't notice, but Shen Yin could see clearly that the boy didn't leave the amusement park. He seemed to suddenly disappear somewhere, without a sound. Shen Yin's heart lifted. Can this boy be number 328? Shen, why are you always daydreaming? Andrew's dissatisfied voice rang out. Shen Yin regained her senses and lowered her head, I'm sorry. She still can't be sure who is 328 between Andrew and that boy. Andrew was lost in his temper by this gentle and weak girl who only bows her head to apologize. He made up his mind that when this incident came to an end, he would apply for a more capable assistant or a physically stronger man. Forget it, let's start. Andrew decided not to worry about this incompetent assistant anymore. He took off the silver cross adorned with rubies on his chest, closed his eyes, and stood devoutly praying in front of the magic circle. Shen Yin poured some holy water into the silver goblet through memories in her mind, and placed it on the cement floor in front of him. With Andrew's vague prayer, some changes gradually occurred in the amusement park. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Evil Ghosts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Evil Ghosts. Shen Yin looked up and saw a strong yin energy blocking the sky and sun. Like a drop of black pigment falling into clean water, quickly dyeing the clear water black. She straightened her expression and held onto a peach wood nail as long as an adult man's palm with her right hand in her wide sleeve. Although his father Shen Wenjun was a famous feng shui master in the Qiqing area, as his only daughter, Shen Yin did not have much talent in feng shui. Shen Wenjun once said that she was born with a body of evil energy that was not favored by countless creatures. She was completely ignorant of feng shui and geomancy, but it was also because of her evil energy that she naturally opposed those harmful bad guys. She didn't learn any of Shen Wenjun's skills, but instead almost flipped through his collection of books that were used to ward off evil spirits and eliminate evil spirits, barely gaining some knowledge. With a strong yin energy, the temperature in the amusement park dropped significantly. Shen Yin stood 5 steps behind Andrew, her gaze fixed on the magic circle in front of him. In her eyes, the gathered yin energy kept rushing towards the magic circle, emitting a faint golden light, accompanied by screams that turned into black smoke. They are hovering around the magic circle, one after another, vowing to break through this magic circle that can harm them. The screams were deafening, making Shen Yin unable to help but want to cover her ears. However, Andrew showed no reaction and continued to recite in a low voice on his own. She trembled all over and her mind began to run rapidly, thinking about the next strategy. Because she saw the golden light of the magic circle gradually dim in the succession of yin energy. Obviously, the magic circle is about to expire. Hesitating whether to remind Andrew, his immediate superior, the golden light on the magic circle suddenly extinguished, and the black blanket was overturned by a sudden gust of wind. Get out of here. Action was faster than thinking, and Shen Yin stepped forward and pushed Andrew away, who was still fully focused on prayer. Andrew was pushed unsteadily by a force, and a crystal ball the size of a football flew past his hair, shattering the concrete behind him. Holy water spilled all over the ground, splashing onto his black robe, bringing a piercing chill. The gathered yin qi unexpectedly condensed into a huge black mist skeleton in mid-air. Without waiting for Shen Yin and Andrew to stand firm, they rushed towards them. Oh my goodness! Andrew exclaimed in surprise, facing the huge skull and opening his mouth wide, his eyes almost popping out. Shen Yin ignored everything else and grabbed his arm, then ran wildly to the side. Whispering incessantly, as well as crazy shouts and mournful cries, came from the yin qi, gradually revealing eerie faces of men and women, old and young, all with ferocious faces and red eyes, resembling cannibalistic monsters. These are all evil spirits. Realizing this, Shen Yin ran at the fastest speed in her life. Andrew seemed to finally be able to see the scene before him, hearing the sound of relentless pursuit behind him. The sweat on his forehead was unclear whether it was due to running or being frightened. What to do, what to do? He kept muttering, his hand tightly gripping the cross without being grabbed, quickly following in Shen Yin's footsteps, even with faint signs of surpassing her. The heart seemed to be about to jump out of her chest, and Shen Yin couldn't hear the cries of ghosts, only her own heartbeat. She didn't know if Andrew was number 328, but she knew she couldn't let a living person die in front of her. After running half the way to the amusement park, Shen Yin stopped first. Her stamina had reached its limit, and if she continued to run, she would definitely faint on the ground. Maybe she died in the hands of a demon and was erased by the game without even finding who 328 was. Andrew had already regained his senses, and he had been running with Shen Yin all the way. The two of them were rampaging in the amusement park, throwing the skull behind them away for a distance. Don't stop, hurry. It's catching up. Andrew gasped and shouted at Shen Yin, as if speaking louder would dispel the fear brought by the skull. This is a 3-meter-wide alley with 3 doors installed side by side. After turning this door, you can reach the square of the amusement park. Passing through the square is the entrance to the amusement park. As long as you exit the gate. As long as you exit the gate, you go. I can't run anymore. Shen Yin bent down to support her knee, panting uncontrollably. One hand was still tightly grasping the peach wood nail, and the chest pain caused by intense exercise made it difficult for her to speak a complete sentence. Sweat dampened her forehead and hair, dribbling down her nose to the ground, making her feel as if she had just crawled out of the water. Andrew looked at the skulls getting bigger and closer to them, gritted his teeth, and his voice became fierce. "I'll go find someone to save you." The girl's back was weak, like a dark red rose whose petals were knocked off by a rainstorm. It was weak and beautiful, which made people feel pity. He thought that he wasn't leaving her alone to escape, he was seeking a way out for them. As long as he was fast enough to go out and find someone, both of them would definitely survive. As Andrew saw the distance between the skull gradually shorten, he no longer hesitated and thrust the cross into Shen Yin's hand. He said, "May God bless you." He then stepped over the half-person high fence with his long legs and ran quickly towards the square. Shen Yin stared blankly at the cross in her hand. The Jesus carved on the silver cross was lifelike, and there was a ruby as big as a small nail cap at the top. This ruby was of excellent quality, even in such a dim situation, it shone with a sparkling light. "This is Andrew's most precious thing," and without hesitation, he handed it to her now. After gasping for breath and standing straight, Shen Yin pursed her lips and put the cross around her neck, stuffing it into the inner layer of her assistant uniform. The cross slid against her skin into her chest, and she couldn't help but shiver. It was getting colder and colder here. Since someone else hands over the most precious thing to her, she will definitely protect it so that it can be returned to its rightful owner. Staring at the oppressed skull, its volume doubled again, and its squeezed face twisted and deformed even more, leaving no gaps. Shen Yin's lips slowly curled up, lifting the peach-wood nails in her hand towards them. The peach-wood nail pierced into the flesh, leaving a bloodstain on the palm of the hand. Blood gushed out and fell to the ground, forming a small puddle. She seemed to feel no pain, arched her waist and back, quickly drawing on the concrete floor with her hands dipped in the still uncooled blood. "Hurry up, at least make Andrew escape, at least make himself alive and find number 328. Sweat mixed with physiological tears flowed all over her face. She lifted her sleeve and quickly wiped it away, while the movements of her other hand continued, but instead accelerated a bit. How could her hands not hurt, but no matter how painful it is, it cannot match the knife that cut her throat or the phrase, "There is no way to live." She cannot give up, even if hope is slim, she must fight hard. Shen Yin gritted her teeth and made her final move. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Rewards. With the last stroke, a golden light flashed by. Fu Cheng. Shen Yin felt her legs were a bit soft, her head was heavy, and it was obvious that she had lost too much blood. But I can't care about that much now. If she falls, it will only be her who dies. Putting the peach-wood nail into her pocket, her hands stained with blood quickly formed a complex mark, staring at the skull that was only 3 or 5 steps away from her, muttering words in her mouth. The huge talisman drawn with blood became brighter and brighter as Shen Yin formed her seal, and the golden light seemed to break through the black mist. Break it. The golden talisman rose into mid-air and collided with the black mist. When extreme yin meets extreme yang, there will be no opponent. The heads wrapped in yin qi instantly felt like they had fallen into a fire, burned by the flames, whispering and laughing wildly, all of which turned into mournful cries. In no time, it was completely burned. The yin energy dissipated, and the surrounding scenery was no longer chaotic and unclear, revealing the true face of those entertainment facilities on Mount Lu. On the right is a bumper car, and on the left is a painted clown sculpture. In this quiet and dark night, its mottled face looked strangely eerie. Shen Yin took a few breaths. Her current condition is extremely poor, with no strength on her body. Holding down her bleeding hand and dragging her weakened body, Shen Yin slowly walked towards Hansa's office, which she remembered was not far from the medical room. Her wound must be treated as soon as possible, otherwise she might have died from excessive bleeding before the 328th. Slowly walk past the bumper car, and as long as you pass another corner, you can see the entrance to the medical room. At the corner, a strong wind hit her face, right at the height of Shen Yin's throat. Being cut by the man in black was due to her untimely reaction, and the person was silent. When waving the dagger, there was not even a trace of wind, giving her no chance to resist. The person who attacked her was much inferior, and the wind brought by the dagger hit her face, so she was able to dodge the sharp dagger on her side. Through the flying black hair, she could see clearly the person who wanted her life. It was the young man who approached her. Number 328. Shen Yin raised her eyebrows. The hand kicked in the pocket grasped the peach wood nail. The young man curled his lips and looked at Shen Yin's small body with disdain. He doesn't even pay attention to such a little girl, she can solve it without any effort, let alone she is still injured, looking precarious. Congratulations, you guessed it right, but there's no reward, he said wickedly, holding a dagger in his hand and stabbing toward Shen Yin with a chopping hand. Shen Yin gritted her back teeth, quickly retreated, turned around, and ran. She kept her right hand in her pocket and didn't take it out, allowing blood to flow into her pocket, making the color of her uniform darker. But where can she compare to the muscular 328? In less than half a minute, he caught up with her, only one step away. It's now. Shen Yin suddenly turned around, and the dagger number 328 plunged straight into her left shoulder. She could feel the dagger stuck in the bone crevice. 328 grinned and tried to pull out the dagger, but was tightly held down by Shen Yin. He simply lifted his left hand and grabbed her slender neck. With just a gentle push, she can immediately stop breathing, and he can also leave this testing ground. He is getting annoyed by this place. Go to hell. 328 said fiercely, exerting his left hand. Shen Yin could hear her teeth creaking as she bit hard. The air became thinner, and the veins on her forehead became more prominent, like ferocious green centipedes crisscrossing. You should go. Die. She struggled to squeeze out this sentence from her teeth, and the peach wood nail tightly held in her right hand finally played its rightful role. Shen Yin fiercely plunged it into the neck of 328. Warm blood splattered all over her head and face. 328's incredulous expression still froze on his face, as he covered his neck with one hand and tried to pinch Shen Yin with the other. Shen Yin didn't give him another chance to hurt herself. She held the peach wood nail a few inches deeper. The blood on her hand mixed with his blood, the same color, the same warmth. Her eyes turned red and she stared at the young man who had just looked at her like an ant, tightly pressing down on the peach wood nail that was soaked in blood and slippery, pressing him down slowly to kneel down like herself. The man opened his mouth wide and let out a wheezing sound in his throat, like a fish that was about to die of thirst when washed onto the beach by a huge wave. His eyes burst with a chilling hatred. Shen Yin showed no signs of weakness, constantly exerting force in her hands. The dagger was still stuck on her shoulder, and there were several deep marks on her fair neck. Shen Yin seemed to feel no pain, and her only thought was to kill this person. Kill him in order to win the game, survive, and find the culprit. She doesn't want to kill, but there's no other way. The man eventually knelt down on the cold ground, with the peach wood nails deeply pierced, leaving only a short section exposed. His head tilted into a strange curve, but he had not yet died, only losing his mobility and becoming on the brink of death. Shen Yin gasped for breath and moved the arm with the dagger stuck in the bone. She felt the dagger slightly move, and raised her hand to forcefully pull out the dagger engraved with a strange beast. Blood followed the dagger and drew a red arc in mid-air. Without feeling the weight of the dagger, she tightly grasped it and used all her strength to cut the man's throat. Congratulations to the player for winning. The mechanical sound echoed in my head again. Shen Yin's eyes darkened. When she woke up again, she was already lying in her own room. Next to it is my mother's body, with bloodstains all over the ground. She touched her neck, where there were no more wounds or pain, and the dagger wound on her shoulder was gone. Only the large bloodstains on her clothes could prove that she had been cut throat before. Taking a long breath, she was certain she had come to life. Congratulations to the player for passing the beginner test and officially obtaining the game qualification. With the mechanical sound, a semi-transparent game panel appeared in front of Shen Yin. Her basic information is displayed above. Nickname: Player 730. Level 1, Game Point. Initial 10 plus Novice Test Reward 30. Players can exchange required items in the mall. Shen Yin saw a small shopping mall next to the basic information and reached out to open it. There were only 3 types of items inside, and the corresponding exchange points were located under the items. Cash of 10,000, 3 points, Pishio Dagger, 5 points, Complete Talisman Collection, Special Asterisk 30 points. Shen Yin thought for a moment and exchanged it for the complete collection of talismans. A white light flashed through her arms, and a thin blue book with 4 big characters on the cover, resembling the fragmented book she had read in her father's study. The official game will start at exactly 23:00 on August 23, please pay attention to adjusting the time. The mechanical sound suddenly sounded, startled Shen Yin, who thought it had already disappeared. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Adoption. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Adoption. On a summer afternoon, the sunshine is bright and the cicadas chirp incessantly. Lin Siyuan carried a fruit basket and entered a single patient room on the 5th floor of the city hospital. A 15 or 16-year-old girl sat on the hospital bed, facing out the window, wearing a black dress as if hanging from her frail body. Yin. He knocked on the open door of the ward. The girl regained her senses, turned her head to look at him, and whispered, "Uncle Lin." Her face was almost emaciated, with a pointed chin and astonishingly large black eyes on her small face. Lin Siyuan sighed in his heart. He watched the child grow up and had never seen her look so haggard before. "I'm here to pick you up and discharge you from the hospital, go to Shan Cemetery." He knew this was hurtful, but couldn't help but say it. 10 members of the Shen family were killed, leaving only Shen Yin, the only one left. Unfortunately, he couldn't find any clues yet. All traces in the courtyard were erased, and the footprints on the mountain road were washed away by the heavy rain. According to Shen Yin's description, a profile was made, but it was no different from searching for a needle in a haystack. Upon hearing that she was going to Shan Cemetery, Shen Yin knew why. Today is the day her family is buried. She has no family anymore. Tears rolled down hard, unable to stop. Lin Siyuan didn't comfort her, he knew she needed to vent. Since he saw her, she has been acting very calm, not crying or making noise, as if nothing had happened, like a soulless doll. He knew she was holding everything in her heart, and now crying is actually a good thing. After coming down from the Shan Cemetery and hesitating repeatedly, Lin Siyuan proposed his idea. He wants to adopt Shen Yin. Lin Siyuan is 37 years old this year. His parents passed away early and he has no children. His wife divorced him 10 years ago and now she lives alone in the dormitory of the company. If Shen Yin is adopted, he will use his savings over the years to buy a small house in the city for her to live in, which will also facilitate her education at No. 1 middle school. Are you willing? I definitely treat you as my biological daughter. No, I've always treated you as my biological daughter these years. Lin Siyuan said incoherently, his steering wheel tightened. To be honest, he didn't feel so nervous proposing to his ex-wife back then. The girl sitting in the back seat lowered her head, unable to see the expression on her face clearly. Through the rearview mirror, Lin Siyuan could only see her pale chin. The scene outside the window flashed by rapidly, and time passed by minute by second. After an unknown amount of time, she finally spoke softly. "Okay, thank you, Dad Lin." Shen Yin had no choice. Lin Siyuan is very kind to her, and he is also her father's best friend. In her short 15 years, besides her parents and family, he was the best relationship with her. Her self-defense skills also came from him, otherwise she wouldn't have the ability to kill 328. Thinking of the 328th, her stomach churned and she always dreamed of him dying these past few days, which made her suffer unbearably. She couldn't help but stroke her chest and feel the cross hanging inside through the thin fabric. I didn't expect the cross to follow her back to reality. With this cross, she can truly feel that things have passed. Upon hearing Shen Yin agree to his proposal, Lin Siyuan's lips couldn't help but curl upwards. He had always wanted a daughter, but he was injured during a mission and lost his fertility. In order not to delay his wife, the two divorced. Now, his life has been fulfilled, as the gloom caused by his friend's death has faded a bit. He secretly swore to his friends in his heart that he would take good care of their daughter and never give up pursuing the murderer. Taking advantage of the waiting time at the traffic lights, he sent a text message to the real estate agent to book the house he had been interested in a few days ago. The house is located 2 streets next to City No. 1 Middle School, convenient for Shen Yin to go to school, and about half an hour's drive from his workplace. Although it is a school district house, the landlord is rushing to go abroad, so the price is not too high. He only needs to borrow a little from his colleagues. What does Yin want to eat? How about seafood? After texting, he stepped on the gas pedal and the car started driving. He pretended to be relaxed and asked. Shen Yin was lying on the window, letting the wind disturb her long hair. "Sure, listen to Mr. Lin." She turned to look at Lin Siyuan and answered in his tone. She understood that they were all eager to make their future life less oppressive. The two of them went for a seafood buffet together, and Lin Siyuan took Shen Yin to the hotel. Even if the case came to an end, he dared not let her stay on such a distant mountain as a little girl. After Lin Siyuan left, Shen Yin clicked on the bank app on her phone. Looking at the balance displayed on the app, she lowered her eyelids and said it was 150,966 yuan. Dad should have had a premonition, so he transferred all the money from home to her card. Shen Wenjun is a famous feng shui master. There are many people who come to him to tell fortune and observe feng shui, and the remuneration he receives is generous. However, every time he receives money, he only leaves a small amount for his family's expenses, and the rest is used for good deeds. This money should have been saved by his mother by opening an online store to sell embroidery in the past 2 years. She clicked on Lin Siyuan's V.letter and forwarded it to 150,000. During the meal, Lin Siyuan told her that he would buy a 2-bedroom, 1 living room house for her to live in outside of No. 1 Middle School and write her name. She is very aware of his financial situation. He is as kind as his father and often helps some lonely elderly people. He can't save much money at all. I hope the house can have the names of me and Dad Lin written on it, otherwise I won't be able to feel at ease living there. She typed down the sentence word by word and clicked on Send. The screen shows, the other party is typing but there has been no message coming back. 5 minutes later, she received a message from Lin Siyuan, which was only a few short words. Got it. Dad, listen to you. After a simple wash, Shen Yin opened her backpack and took out the complete collection of talismans obtained from the game. She didn't remember wrong, it was indeed the same scroll as the one she had seen in her father's study, but there were only 12 talismans in that scroll. The breaking evil talisman she used in the amusement park came from it, and there were a total of 7,749 talismans in this book, which gathered various talismans and perfectly matched its name. She took out another stack of yellow watch paper and cinnabar brush and began learning the remaining 30.7. I don't know what the next game will be like, what kind of danger she will encounter, and there are only about 10 days left until August 23rd. She must have the ability to protect herself. Busy time always passes exceptionally fast. At 22:58 on August 23, Shen Yin packed everything up and lay on her own small bed. She has moved to this house for a week, and the environment here is good. With Lin Siyuan's insistence, she has moved into the master bedroom with the best lighting. At exactly 23:00, the mechanical tone sounded accurately. Welcome player 730 to the game, you have 5 minutes to purchase the initial item. New story, I hope everyone likes it. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Acquaintances. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Acquaintances. 3 types of items and corresponding points appear on the virtual panel in front of me. Normal dagger, 1 point, intermediate dagger, 5 points, advanced dagger, 10 points. Shen Yin thought for a moment and chose refuse. Currently, it seems that the dagger has little effect on her, and she prefers the reward after winning the game. This round of the game is 3v3, with opponents numbered 255, 863, and 1045. The rules are the same as the beginner's test. Winning the game will result in rewards, while losing will result in elimination. Wishing you a pleasant gaming experience. As night fell, the island group also fell into darkness, except for the outermost small island. More than 10 5-story houses have been built on the island, all of which have lights on. On the bed in the attic of the last building lies a sleeping girl. The girl's eyelids furrowed and her eyebrows trembled, and soon she opened her eyes. His eyes were as deep as an ancient well, and like a stagnant pool of water, without any waves. Shen Yin slowly stood up, with a piercing pain in her head. She took a deep breath before suppressing the brutality caused by her headache and finishing the game storyline. Getting out of bed and putting on slippers, Shen Yin entered the bathroom. The young girl in the mirror is not very old, with a petite figure. She is dressed in a wide orange prison uniform, with long black hair that reaches her waist, fair skin, large and round apricot eyes, a pretty and delicate nose, and slightly upturned petal-like lips. Shen Yin tugged at the corner of her lips, and the girl in the mirror showed a mocking smile. She is a high school student in the plot of this game. As the top scorer in the middle school entrance examination, she has an extremely attractive appearance and became popular after being interviewed by reporters. She is known as the city flower, but unexpectedly, she is entangled by the mayor's son and accidentally kills the maggot when it cannot be strong enough to pursue her. In order to torture her, the mayor threw her into a survival game program called Golden Escape, which had already reached its final episode. She belonged to the category of airborne players. And in the program, there is also a real act of killing to survive. Once it is confirmed to participate in the program, a life and death certificate will be signed, and the rest of life and death will be the responsibility of oneself. The live broadcast mode used in The Golden Escape resulted in a winner's prize of 1 billion gold coins. Because the bonus was too generous, after going through multiple rounds of selection, there were still the last 500 people left, and everyone wanted to become the final winner. These 500 players come in all shapes and sizes, including extremely wanted criminals, experienced mercenaries, and desperate gamblers. There are many dangerous people. The mayor threw her into the game for an obvious purpose. Since the morning competition, there have been less than 300 people left. On the silver watch with a strong sense of technology, the number representing the number of survivors is constantly decreasing. Shen Yin flipped through the room and found the backpack she had brought with her, which was still the backpack she had carried when she was caught. There were only some books inside. Taking out the book and throwing it away, Shen Yin left the homework book that had not been written yet. She used an art knife to cut the homework book into rectangular shapes of uniform size, cut her finger, and used her own blood to write and draw on the rectangular paper. It took a whole 2 hours to process those stacks of paper. Pack up her things and put them into her backpack. In the room, she found a large black men's hooded jacket. Shen Yin put it directly on her body and opened the door. In the oncoming wind, there was a faint smell of blood, and she felt as if she had entered the realm of some slaughterhouse. A large coat and hat covered half of her face, revealing cherry blossom pink lips and a pointed chin, obscuring her meaningful expression. On the first day, people began to be eager to eliminate their opponents. Lu Tingting was wearing a black lace camisole short skirt, with fishing net socks and marten boots on her lower body. Her chin-tied bob was dyed pink, and she wore smoky makeup, making it impossible to tell her age. She sat cross-legged on the suspended chair, allowing a strong man with blonde hair and blue eyes to kiss her calves. This strong man is her boyfriend Sam, both of whom are players, so they teamed up to participate in this round of the game. "Darling, when are we going out?" Lu Tingting's hand caressed Sam's cheek, her voice sweet and greasy. Sam stood up and hugged her waist, explaining in a warm voice, "Billion gold coins, don't you want it, baby?" Lu Tingting paused for a moment, wanting to say, "I don't want to." The two words reached her lips, but it was hard to say. After the game ended, the higher the level of people, the more things they could bring out. If they could bring out 1 billion gold coins, it would be enough for them to spend a long time. It's normal for her to be unable to say a word of rejection when faced with a huge temptation. She gave her boyfriend a bad kick, buried her head in his chest, and said in a muffled voice, "Then you must protect me." She is only at level 3 now, but Sam has almost reached level 7. In the first 2 rounds of the game, she also relied on teaming up with him to pass the level safely. The man chuckled and picked her up, placing her on the bed. "Then you have to take good care of me," he said. Shen Yin stood at the door and heard the commotion inside. After thinking for a moment, she turned around and left. This couple is the closest person to her room, and the room is not soundproof. She can hear their conversation clearly. Even if the female voice said something strange, she couldn't be sure if these two were players, let alone whether they were enemies or friends. As soon as she arrived at the staircase, a steel knife shining with a cold light slanted towards the corner. Shen Yin's footsteps paused, and she slightly avoided the knife on one side of her body. With a lift of her right hand, she pinched her thin wrist. Even without her exertion, the steel knife fell to the ground with a loud bang. Shen Yin looked up and saw that the person who ambushed her was an old man in his 50s, whom she even knew. Li Yuncheng, the former richest man in Suzuki City, was very close to his father for a period of time, and the two families often had interactions. Recently, for some reason, the whole family suddenly disappeared without any news. "Uncle Li!" Shen Yin exclaimed in surprise, not expecting to run into Li Yuncheng here. Li Yuncheng also seemed to have just recognized her, with a puzzled expression on his face. "Is it the Yin of Shen Wenjun's family?" Shen Yin nodded and let go of his wrist. Since this was not the place to speak, Shen Yin picked up a knife and led him to her room. "I finally know the reason why he came here." Li Yuncheng was framed for bankruptcy, burdened with huge debts, and his wife and children were in a car accident and unconscious. He had no choice but to jump off a building and was summoned by a big player. He chose to be a player and, upon hearing the game rewards, decided to take a gamble. He hopes to exchange money through games to treat his wife and children's illnesses, and can also use this money to make a comeback. Shen Yin stared at his face for a while, feeling that he didn't seem to be lying. People who could become his father's guests were basically not bad people. After his wife and children had an accident, Li Yuncheng wanted to go over and ask Shen Wenjun for help, but when he arrived at Qishan, he only saw the door with a seal attached. After asking Lin Siyuan, who introduced him to Shen Wenjun, he found out that the Shen family had been killed, leaving only Shen Wenjun's only daughter. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the risk of entering this strange game. Unexpectedly, he would have encountered Shen Yin. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Teammates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Teammates. You mourn. He moved his lips and only uttered these powerless 3 words. Shen Yin nodded, with no expression on her face, and only asked softly, "Excuse me, what number of player are you?" As soon as she finished speaking, she clearly felt the old man sitting in front of her stiffen, and the air in the room seemed to freeze at this moment. Li Yunqing clenched and loosened his fist on his knee, repeated several times, and finally answered as if he had made up his mind, but his eyes were fixed on the steel knife placed not far away. Number 333. Shen Yin breathed a sigh of relief. She bent her lips, and there seemed to be a glimmer of light in her calm eyes. "I am 730, very lucky, Uncle Li. We are teammates." Li Yunqing felt bitter in his heart, but it was difficult to show it. They are old and young, with little combat power, and can only rely on another teammate, otherwise they will only be left to be slaughtered. The novice test showed that his opponent was a strong man, who fought against him in a battle of wits and survived through a narrow escape. It is unlikely that his opponent this time will be a simple character. Seeing his decadence, Shen Yin didn't know what to say. As of now, it seems that the two of them really have no chance of winning. "Should we go out and take a look?" Li Yunqing broke the silence in the room. Staying in the room all the time made him very uneasy, especially as the numbers on his watch kept decreasing, and now there were only over 100 people left. Shen Yin also had this intention. During the beginner's test, she brought out Andrew's cross, and this time she wanted to see if it was as she had guessed. The two walked lightly to the door, and Shen Yin lay there listening for a while. After confirming that there was no movement outside, she opened the door and stepped out first. Li Yunqing followed closely with a steel knife. The game did not remind her how to play, so she had to rely on herself to gradually explore. After going downstairs, there was no one there, and there were many blood stains on the walls and floors that had not yet dried up. There was a room with a wide open door, and inside lay a corpse. It can be seen how brutal the previous fighting was. It seems that they are facing not only players from the big players, but also players from the Golden Escape, with the task difficulty skyrocketing. Li Yunqing has a steel knife, while Shen Yin has nothing but the art knife in her pocket and a stack of talismans in her bag. The top priority is to find a weapon that can defend herself. Picking and choosing in the room downstairs, Shen Yin obtained a long knife with no patterns on it. The handle was wrapped in a circle of black leather, and the scabbard was the same as the leather on the handle, giving it a good grip. She waved her knife with both hands, feeling a stumble in her footsteps and feeling very satisfied. She found a strap to tie the scabbard and carried the knife on her back. Li Yunqing hesitated to speak. This little girl is already struggling with a knife on her back. If she encounters danger, how can she move? But he didn't speak up to stop it. In such a situation, even teammates have no obligation to help each other, let alone in case their own kindness harms them. Human nature is the most untested thing. "Let's go." The girl's voice became much lighter. Li Yunqing lowered his eyebrows and nodded silently. "Forget it, take a closer look." The two of them continued walking cautiously downstairs, and the journey was smooth and peaceful, reaching the first floor safely. A salty sea breeze came towards us, mixed with a strong smell of blood, and the taste was not very pleasant. Except for the small building behind them, several buildings around them have already been cut off from electricity, with black lights and nothing to see clearly. Not far away, there is a small path with faint street lights on, and neither of them knows exactly where it leads. "Uncle Li, where are we going next?" Shen Yin said coldly. Perhaps her game character this time is just a pitiful little one forced into the game, with not much plot in her mind and many situations unknown. I hope to complete the plot with Li Yunqing. I don't know either, but my memory tells me that if I want to find a token, as long as I get the token, I will win. Li Yunqing pondered for a long time and carefully revealed the information he had obtained from the game plot. Shen Yin breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she was just looking for a token. If she wanted to kill until the end, she probably would die here. The token may be anywhere in this island group, Li Yunqing was worried. With such a large island group, where did they start looking? No, why is he worried about winning from the show? Shouldn't we find our opponents to kill and win this round of the game? However, what we should do now is find a way to find our opponent, Li Yunqing said as he looked at Shen Yin, who was touching her chin thoughtfully. In his opinion, winning games is more important than winning programs. Shen Yin shook her head and said, Uncle Li, our layout can be bigger, with 1 billion gold coins. If we can bring it out. After a pause, she continued, there is no conflict between winning a program and winning a game. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Want to win? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Want to win? This girl really dares to think. Where does she have the confidence to win both the show and the game? Uncle Li, I believe you don't have to say anything. You know that game points are the most important thing, and we haven't rejected game options. Even if it's for our own survival, we shouldn't use them to exchange for the most useless cash in the game. Shen Yin looked up slightly, facing Li Yunqing's slightly cloudy eyes due to recent setbacks. She made no secret of her ambition to become stronger. Lin's father spent all his savings to buy her a house. They had to make a living, and she had to investigate her enemies and take the college entrance exam, all of which were inseparable from money. But compared to life, money is certainly more important than life. Now, money and life are in front of her, and Shen Yin's choice is of course. Only children make the choice. She is already half an adult, and of course she wants everything. Looking at her sparkling eyes in the dim light, Li Yunqing gritted his teeth. Got it. Die or die, anyway he should have died long ago, and his current life is borrowed. Maybe with a little effort, a bicycle can turn into a motorcycle. Okay, I'll listen to you. Let's go find the token first. Li Yunqing searched around and saw a corpse lying in a nearby corner of the wall. The usable items on the body have been scraped clean, and even the coat has disappeared, leaving only a large black short-sleeved piece. Li Yunqing suppressed his discomfort and took off the short sleeve of the corpse, wrapping his unsheathed steel knife tightly in a few strokes. When he finished tidying up, Shen Yin took the lead in walking towards the overgrown path. She had just looked and there was no other way around, only this winding path leading to the misty island. The path only allows one person to pass, with weeds and thorns on both sides. If you don't pay attention, you will be hooked and scratched by them, leaving small wounds on the exposed skin. Fortunately, Shen Yin was wearing a spacious men's jacket and a hat, revealing only a pair of dark eyes. Li Yunqing was wearing a suit, with a cloth strip wrapped around his hand and a helmet he had picked up on his head. Their attire may seem out of place, but they both feel a sense of security. After groping along the path for nearly 20 minutes, my eyes suddenly became clear. There is a river over 10 meters wide here, and on their side there are several brand new wooden boats equipped with oars. Shen Yin looked at the numbers on her watch, and at this point, the speed of the numbers decreasing had slowed down and gradually stabilized. This means that the weak are almost eliminated, with most of the remaining being strong and a few being stronger. The two of them no longer hesitated and jumped onto a small boat at will. Li Yunqing did a lot of work when he was young, and it wasn't until middle age that he made a fortune. He once rowed a small boat in a scenic area for a period of time to visit the lake. This boat was not much different from that time, so the two of them didn't have to be flustered by one boat. Shen Yin sat in the back row, listening to Li Yunqing's instructions. He said what to do, and she followed suit. The small boat moved forward along the river, gradually leaving the distance that the streetlights could reach. There was no light in the dense forests on either side, and the bright moonlight fell, blocked by the mist surrounding the forest. Not far away came the cries of some unknown animals, accompanied by the sound of splashing water, playing a strange peaceful song in such a dark night. After a long period of time, Shen Yin's arms began to slightly ache, and finally a house appeared ahead. The house is not large, only 2 floors, standing in the center of the river. Shen Yin cannot understand the principles of architecture, but it does not hinder her appreciation. Antique buildings, carved beams and painted rafters, are exquisite and have an atmosphere of splashing ink, as if they were made by someone. The house was brightly lit, and from time to time there was a sound of pushing cups and changing lamps. As she got closer, Shen Yin saw a sign standing at the entrance of the house, which read, Armistice Station. There is also a row of small characters below, which means that participants can rest here. There are supplies provided to everyone inside, and fighting is prohibited in the ceasefire zone, which violates the disqualification of participants. Finally, I can take a break. Shen Yin thought to herself and greeted Li Yunqing to park the small boat at the mini-dock built with wooden planks used for the ceasefire. Several ships have already docked here, crowded together in a disorderly manner, as if the nature of this program is completely disorganized. The dock was very small, only over 10 square meters old. Shen Yin carefully climbed up and could see the lobby of the ceasefire station as soon as she saw it. Inside, there were more than 10 men and women sitting on the ground, chatting while eating, and the atmosphere was as lively as a celebration banquet. Shen Yin was not very good at dealing with such lively occasions, so she slowed down and walked behind Li Yunqing. Li Yunqing noticed her intention and didn't say anything. This girl is finally someone her age now. Let's go. He held on to the steel knife slung across his waist and quickened his steps towards the people. In such a tense environment, after rowing for so long, he was already so hungry that his chest pressed against his back. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Team Building. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Team Building. The arrival of the two did not break the lively atmosphere in the hall. There are no tables or chairs in the hall, and everyone is sitting on the ground. The walls on both sides are embedded with neat grids with password locks, which hold various types of food and drinks. The two opened 2 squares using the pickup code displayed on the watch. Shen Yin noticed that no one was paying attention and stuffed the excess food and water from the compartment into her backpack. Li Yunqing didn't have a backpack, so he stuffed 2 compressed biscuits into his suit pocket before taking bread and water and sitting down in a corner. Shen Yin followed behind him step by step, holding a piece of bread and a bottle of water in her hand. Some people in the crowd who were sitting together noticed their movements and let out a disdainful snort. The two of them pretended not to hear them and wolfed down on their own. Hello, my name is Mary. May I sit with you? The young woman with blonde hair and blue eyes was holding 2 bottles of water, wearing a semi-old European dress and carrying a dirty canvas bag across her shoulder. She walked up to the two of them and greeted them with a smile. She is not very old, looking only in her early 20s, with a few freckles on her cheeks. Li Yunqing nodded at her and then continued to nibble on the bread. Mary maintained a smile, handed the water in her hand to the two, and explained, I haven't opened the seal before. Thank you, but we already have it. Li Yunqing picked up his own water and gestured. The ceasefire only stated that fighting was not allowed, and did not say that other means could not be used. Who knows who the other person is? In such an environment, maintaining vigilance is better than trusting others. At least he and Shen Yin can be considered to have a deep understanding, and they are also teammates in the game. I'm alone and I want to find someone to form a team. I don't know if you're willing to accept me. Mary sat on the side close to Li Yunqing, her face slightly red. She knew that most people in China were more reserved, so speaking rashly might lead to rejection, but she had to do so. This place is really too dangerous. If you don't stay with people, you will definitely die. She doesn't want to die yet. She wants to get that prize money and return to her hometown to get married. Mary said she was a European, from a declining aristocrat, and was an old girl who was over 20 years old but still unmarried. Because she doesn't have a dowry, no nobleman is willing to marry her. I accidentally found out about this program, so I resolutely signed up and worked tirelessly through layers of selection to get here. Teaming up with others is always safer than fighting alone, Mary was very sincere and her words were not wrong. This island group is too dangerous, and the people in the program are the same. They can easily land if they are not careful. Li Yunqing looked at Shen Yin and sought her opinion. He wouldn't treat her as a junior and ignore her thoughts. Although he is a junior, he firmly believes that relying on luck in the game is not feasible. Shen Wenjun is so skilled that his daughter, even if she doesn't learn, can still learn some of his skills from a young age. Shen Yin happened to also look at Li Yunqing, and their eyes met perfectly. Perhaps this is the reason why players are divided into teammates in the game, as they can understand each other's meaning with just one glance. Li Yunqing coughed lightly and introduced himself to Mary first. You can call me Lao Li. This is my niece, you can call her Yin Yin. Out of caution, Li Yunqing did not disclose their full names. Mary bent her lips toward Shen Yin, her whole state visibly relaxed. Shen Yin has not been a lively person since she was young. In the face of Mary's goodwill, she just nodded at her, as if accepting this new teammate. Silence spreads among the three. Until a young man and woman walked over and broke the awkward atmosphere. They had just arrived here, and the young man received supplies and wanted to join the people sitting around him. He didn't want to be ruthlessly rejected, so he had to settle down and follow the young woman to the corner of the wall. The woman was wearing a kimono with pink cherry blossoms printed on it, carrying a bow and arrow, kneeling before Shen Yin and the others. Hello, you guys. She smiled to death with her eyebrows and eyes curved. She had a typical round face, very cute, and exuded a sense of vitality all over her body. The enthusiastic Mary responded to her. Hello. When two enthusiastic people come together, there will never be a moment of silence in this corner again. The kimono woman pulled the man he was with and introduced herself to the three of them. My name is Yukaina Oda, and this is my fiancé Hiroshi Yamamoto. Li Yunqing calmly pulled out what he had said to Mary and said it again, but Shen Yin didn't even lift her eyelids. I don't know why, but subconsciously, she felt that Yamamoto Hong was a person she disliked very much. Perhaps it was his disdainful gaze when he scanned them, or perhaps for some other reason, Shen Yin felt a cold and ominous aura emanating from him. It's just bad luck, as if once it gets infected, it will bring some misfortune to oneself. Shen Yin had not yet learned to hide her emotions like an adult, and her face naturally showed displeasure towards these two people. After Li Yunqing discovered it, he gently tugged at her sleeve in an invisible place. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Great Escape. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Great Escape. Yamamoto Hiroshi also had a bad expression towards these three old and weak people. According to his wishes, they should be with the strong contestants in the middle of the hall. Thinking of the reasons for being rejected by those people, he looked at Oda Shingnai, who was chatting incessantly with the blonde woman. If it weren't for this fiancé AE, he might have joined the team that seemed to have a good chance of winning long ago. Unfortunately, his father had warned him before the competition that he could never be separated from Yukino Oda. Although he felt unwilling, he was helpless. Yukino Oda is the strongest witch in the shrine, while he is the worst young master in the family's generation. This position of a witch cannot marry anyone, she can only hire someone. In order to marry a shrine, the family did not hesitate to push her out. He became a sacrifice in this marriage alliance. No one has ever asked him if he is willing or not. Fortunately, the gods heard his prayer and bestowed upon him such a powerful deity. As long as he looked at Oda Shingnai's bright and beautiful face again. As long as this hypocritical woman can die in this game, he can get rid of these nightmares. Shen Yin noticed his gaze and calmly moved away. Because a young man slowly walked into the dock. The boy was wearing a blue and red school uniform, which was covered in dried blood, with a few inches left, revealing sharp eyebrows and eyes. Holding the dirty backpack in his hand, it was evident from his tightly pursed lips that his mood was very bad at the moment. When he walked into the hall, the originally dim hall seemed to be lit up in an instant. The young man's skin was abnormally white, and his facial features were as deep as a knife cut. He was a person who, even with the most discerning eyes, would still feel handsome. However, when looking at people, he carried a fierce aura that would make people overlook his appearance. "Hey, kid. Do you want to join our team?" The noisy team of strong men immediately threw an olive branch at him, interspersed with a few ambiguous teasing. The strong men exchanged glances, looking at the young man with a look of ill intentions. The young man passed by them with a cold face, and during this time, one hand tried to pull his leg, but he slammed his backpack into his hand and let out a scream. The strong men looked at him with increasing interest, just like seeing a pet cat with outstretched claws. Shen Yin watched as he went to the cabinet to retrieve supplies and sat in the corner opposite them. His eating behavior is noble and elegant, completely different from his appearance. He looks like a ruffian on the outside, but eats like a nobleman. What a contradictory person. "Yin, we're ready to leave." Li Yunqing's voice rang out. Their small team must take a step first, otherwise if they go out and are surrounded by the strong men's team, none of them will survive. Shen Yin guessed his thoughts and without saying a word, picked up her backpack and stood up to follow the others. She was too thin and tightly wrapped, only revealing a pair of black eyes, which attracted the strong men to look at her twice. She tightened the knife on her back and quickened her steps. Quickly stepping out of the hall, Mary boarded the small boat of Li Yunqing and Shen Yin. The rowers naturally changed from petite Shen Yin to slightly taller Mary. Oda Xingnai originally wanted Shen Yin and her boat to go first, but didn't want Yamamoto Hong to move faster. Before she could react, she rowed the boat ahead. Her fiancé acted recklessly, was arrogant and cowardly, and she was dissatisfied from the bottom of her heart. Unfortunately, this was a family alliance, and in the face of her strict father, she couldn't say anything to refuse. Since the audition, this reckless man has been dragging her back and now wants to sabotage her plan. Oda Xingnai's innocent big eyes flashed a hint of sharpness. "So, let's take this opportunity to get rid of this mediocre and incompetent man. If he died on his own foolishness, his father probably wouldn't have any objections, would he?" Two small boats lined up and slowly sailed forward, leaving the visible distance of the ceasefire. Li Yunqing signaled to Mary to speed up. Just in case, they have to stay further away from that group of strong men. Shen Yin rummaged through her backpack for a while and found a talisman drawn with her blood. This talisman is called the Great Power Talisman, and the person who uses it can achieve 20 times the strength of normal times. However, her abilities are insufficient and she won't be so exaggerated. She put a sticker on each of Mary and Li Yunqing's hands. The two only felt a heat flow passing from their backs to their arms, and their strength instantly increased. The small boat quickly distanced itself from the one behind them. Xiaotian Xingnai noticed from Shen Yin when she pasted talismans for the two of them. She didn't hesitate and stood up with a few sharp jumps, landing steadily in front of Shen Yin, and even gave her a playful wink. Due to the addition of one person, the hull of the ship was pressed down a few inches, but it still sailed steadily. Mary was very surprised by this magical little piece of paper, but Li Yunqing didn't have much expression. He had encountered many masters before and had seen many different methods. Such talismans can be considered childish. Damn it! Yamamoto Hong didn't expect to be left behind. That woman's skills are so impressive, why did she let him charge ahead in everything before? She didn't even consider him as her fiancé. Since that's the case, when we meet again, he won't show mercy. End of this chapter.